Welcome back, everyone, to another episode here on the Buccos podcast. My name is Nathan. I am joined by special guest of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Colin Beazley. Colin, thank you for joining me. How are you today on this fine Saturday afternoon?
It's a beautiful Saturday. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun time. And this is the first kind of big episode of the offseason for me, mapping out the offseason. So you and Jason Mackey have done it a lot on your Post-Gazette YouTube channel, and you've been talking about it in multiple articles about what the Pirates have to do. And it just made me kind of think, I was like, I wanted to bring you on and see where your head is, what we can do to maybe fix this team. Because let me just ask you this question, and we'll talk about these two positions mainly, but is it fair to say third base and left field, or just the outfield in general, are probably the two top positions that this team needs to figure out this offseason?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Those were the two biggest weaknesses last year. They don't really have someone set in place to field either of those positions, in my opinion. I think it's absolutely the two biggest needs the Pirates have.
Yeah, do you think it's we'll talk about it in this episode, but do you think it's more realistic we could see like a trade for one and then sign for the other, or is it just going to be the same old, like 1 year type of deals? And we'll of course talk about this later, but just kind of like projecting this, like I know a lot of people bring up Mitch Keller, you have to trade him. This is something we might talk about in this episode, but like where's your head out on this? Like, what is the biggest priority of the bunch if you had to choose one position?
I think probably third base would be the bigger one in my mind. And I know that technically you could play Nick York at second, Nick Gonzalez at shortstop, and Jared Triolo at third base. I don't think that that's something that the Pirates necessarily want to do. I don't think that's something that fans want to see. I don't think that's really a win for pretty much anyone. I think that third base is the position that they need to upgrade. And if you could only choose one. And getting back to what you were saying before, I kind of do think that they'll do one of each for third base and left field. I know that, or I expect them to wheel and deal a bit this offseason. I expect a trade similar to a Spencer Horwitz type trade. So I wouldn't be shocked if they trade for a third baseman and sign a left fielder, or trade for a left fielder and sign a third baseman. That's kind of what I'm expecting to see happen.
Yeah, and when we talk about the Spencer Horwitz trade, that trade has ultimately looked good on the Pirates end because of course, Luis Ortiz kind of angling towards the banned for life portion. But Horwitz was very productive, and it was kind of a bright spot of a poor offensive Pirates team this year. And whenever you look at this team coming into it, one of the worst offenses we've seen in a long time for the Pirates, and they desperately need to add a stat known as slugging and basically power to this team. Hearing every writer talk about it, YouTubers talk about it. Now, let's get into third base, and I feel like we'll spend majority of this episode on third base and the outfield. But you just released an article. I don't want to spoil it, but you brought up some names. I feel like your big target is Suarez. Is this something? I know he had this big power surge, 49 home runs this year. My thing with him, I don't know if it's a big concern or it's too big of a concern because we desperately need pop on this Pirates team. It's just the consistency. Is this something to be like worried about? Because I know his power kind of dipped off after the trade from Arizona to Seattle. And it was something that kind of stuck out to me because we see a lot of Pirates fans on social media say, oh, low batting average. They stink, a.k.a. O'Neal Cruz, even if he hits 20 home runs. If he's hitting 200, he's public enemy number one. Is this someone you think Pirates fans, like the casuals who only look at batting average, is this something that they could look at and not really be worried about? Or like, what do you think about Suarez?
I think that there is real risk with him. I think that the reason that he's someone who could be affordable this offseason is because there are really some clear downsides with him. I don't know if it's necessarily red flags, but you look at his age, he's 34. You look at his defense, it's declining. You look at that second half slump in Seattle, it was nowhere near as good as he was in Arizona. And you look at that and there's reason to be concerned about it. What you're saying with batting average, that's kind of just who he is. Fortunately, people who use batting average as the end all and be all also use RBIs and home runs, and he was really good at those two things, so that kind of evens out in my mind. But yeah, with Suarez, there is some real concern there. However, he also just does so many things right for the Pirates and does so many things that the Pirates need. And really the big one is that pop that we talked about. I don't expect him to come to PNC Park and hit 49 home runs. I saw on the North Shore 9 game show last night, apparently he would have hit 42 homers in PNC Park if he played here in every game in 2025. So I'd expect it to dip a little bit if he were to come here. But that pop is something the Pirates need. Pirates need just a dude in the middle of the lineup. They also need someone who's going to provide some lineup protection for O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds and Spencer Horwitz and other guys in the lineup. And they could also use a true veteran star in that clubhouse. So I think Eugenio Suarez just checks a lot of boxes. If you could tell me right now they're signing one person this offseason, that's the one I'd ask for.
And this feels like a very weird situation too with Suarez, because he's one of those guys that during the season everyone's making is like, oh, he's going to get this crazy deal. And then you see like these projections, like I think trade rumors had it like 3 for 67, not even in like the 9-figure range. Is it weird to say this is actually like a high-end free agent the Pirates could easily be in on? Like, I feel like that's uncharted territory for a team that historically does not spend the most.
I can't say easily be in on, considering the whole haven't signed a multi-year free agent since 2016. Like that's you can't say that there and say it's easy. But when you look at the contract projections, when you look at his annual value, when you look at the guys the Pirates have gotten off the books in recent off seasons and even during last season, it really does seem like something that the Pirates could swing without having to go above the 85, 90 million payroll. I think that you could devote a big chunk of that to Eugenio Suarez and still balance the books, still stay in comfortable financial waters. When I was looking at contract projections, I've seen basically between 3 for 60 and 3 to 75. And that $20 to $25 million range is something that I really do think the Pirates could do. And that's even before you get into the Mitch Keller stuff that we will probably talk about later.
Yeah, definitely. And one final third baseman, I don't want to spoil your whole article, but the other name that kind of stuck out to me, and I know you've talked about this on your YouTube channel, the Post-Gazette YouTube channel with Mackey, Alec Boehm. Now, I have a couple of friends that are Phillies fans, and they were like, we are not trading Alec Boehm. We cannot do it. I was like, I don't know about that. What can you tell me about how he would fit onto this Pirates roster and like what a possible trade if you were the GM of the Pirates or a Phillies GM? What do you think a Boehm trade would look like? Would that be like a Mitch Keller for Alec Boehm and maybe a prospect, or like what type of deal would that be?
So some background on that. Everything I read from Phillies writers and from I went to school in Philadelphia, so I have a lot of friends who are Phillies fans. I read that team's coverage a fair bit, and it sounds like that's a player that they've been interested in shopping just because they'd like more from their third baseman. They'd like an Alex Bregman, or they'd like someone with a little bit more pop than he has. And considering they've kind of run back the same core year after year and it hasn't worked out, in my opinion and in Dave Dombrowski's opinion, something's got to change. And the easiest way to do that is save $10 million, trade Boehm, and either sign a big third base free agent or do something else there. Reason the Pirates should be interested in him is because he's a high average hitter, hits for pop, or has a little bit of pop. He's in the like 10 to 15 homer range. He's a guy who just gets on base and would be a clear upgrade for the Pirates at third base. The big downside for it is he is in his final year of his contract. He's projected around $10.5 million in his final year of arbitration. So I don't think this is a place where you'd have to deal Mitch Keller. I don't know exactly what the Phillies would be interested in. I think that would probably be something where it would be a prospect or two lower level guys just because he is in that final year of arbitration. But considering where the Pirates are at, considering this is your last year before you have to pay Paul Skeens, considering this is Ben Cherington's 7th year, it kind of would be a win now move that I think would make sense.
Yeah, he sticks out as like a name. And like they were talking about the North Shore 9 thing last night. And the analogy was third base going from Brian Hayes, where it was just glove first. And even Jared Triolo, kind of like a glove first guy, to a guy that can hit the ball hard or hit like Suarez, 40 plus home runs, or even just 30 plus on a down year. That would be just a complete 180 different approach. And I feel like that would be a breath of fresh air that many Pirates fans desperately need to see out of like a corner position, because it's been since you could think like maybe Pedro Alvarez or a third baseman that can hit home runs. Maybe a Jung Ho Gung type, like at least hit 15 plus, not to pull out one of my favorite Pirates of the last 10 years just because. But yeah, so third base, I think I kind of agree that is desperately the position I think they need to look at the most, because I like Jared Trello as a backup. I just don't believe it as the everyday be all for him. But moving on to the outfield, unless you have anything else to add at third base.
I just think it's hilarious how Eugenio Suarez is the exact opposite of Cabrian Hayes. I'd
Yeah,
love to see that. It'd be funny to watch, in my opinion.
yeah, it would be wild. I would love it. I mean, I kind of hope they do it just because I would love to take the gamble on it. But the outfield, Tommy Pham, free agent. I don't know if they're going to bring him back. Personally, if they do, I would prefer it be a fourth outfield. I don't think that can be an everyday option again, especially now, I think year 7 of this regime. But when we look at the outfield, is this where you think they could go on the typical 1-year deal to find maybe a left fielder or even like a right fielder? Because I wasn't planning on talking about the DH position and Andrew McCutchen, but like if he's gone, maybe you move Reynolds to the DH position. In that position, you now have to get 2 outfielders possibly. Or like, do we think we should just settle on let's find a left fielder to replace Tommy Pham?
I don't think Brian Reynolds would be the full-time DH even if McCutchen's not brought back, and obviously that's a completely separate conversation, but Reynolds can still give you 90, 100 starts in the outfield and be perfectly fine. I think they'd probably do more of a platoon if McCutchen's not brought back. I actually am writing about left field. I'll have a similar article coming out on Monday. That you can check out at post-gazette.com. But I really do think that they've got to do something there. There are a couple guys that stood out to me. One who's kind of more in the like 1-year plug and play vein. Another guy that was mentioned on the North Shore 9 show last night was Mike Yastrzemski.
I was going to ask about him.
I think that would be a solid fit. Lefty bat. He's been a 2-WAR player every year of his career. He's older, but he hits right-handed pitching really well. I think that he would do well at PNC Park. I think that's a 1-year rental that I think would do pretty well. And then if you do want to go for a trades, the trade fit that stands out to me, the guys who stand out for me would be the Angels for Joe Adell. Joe Adell was their center fielder. He hit 36 home runs and I believe 98 RBIs last year. Average was low. He didn't walk very much, but he showed a ton of pop, and he was very bad as a defensive center fielder, which means that he's got to move to left field. Pirates need a left fielder. Angels need pitching. I think that is a trade fit that would make a lot of sense for both teams there. And he's only 26 and is under contract for 2 more years. So that's not necessarily a 1-year rental the same way a Bohm would or a Taylor Ward would be. Adell is someone you could have for 2 seasons.
Yeah, and you brought up Taylor Ward. He's another name that I've been seeing like the Angels might move on from, and he's for some reason he's always one of those names. Do you think he would be a good fit with the Pirates just for that power, or is it one of those like he's getting up there in age, a little bit more money? Would you rather the Joe Adell thing, or would you kind of take that risk on a Taylor Ward type because of his power?
I mean, I'd be happy either way because the Pirates would be adding a 35 home run bat. I do think that Ward is the one who's more likely to duplicate that next year. I think that he's more of a sure thing, but he's also in his last year. He's getting paid more money. I'd rather see them go for someone a little bit lower on the scale, and who's going to be around for more than just 1 season if I'm choosing between those two.
Yeah, and this can be a separate question, but if they're making a trade for like even a third baseman or a left fielder in this situation, do you think they would trade for a guy with only 1 year left, or would they want that control like Spencer Horwitz? So like if they were to trade for a, let's say like Taylor Ward, 1 year left, that would kind of be the equivalent of signing a guy to that 1-year deal and like hoping they stay, or like you can work something out. Or do you think they should go the Horwitz route and like a Joe Adell type where they can have some control on them?
Well, the perfect world is getting someone with control, and that's if you're going to deal a Mitch Keller, if you're going to deal one of the young pitchers that's under team control for a while, it's going to be for someone who's all in return for someone who's also around for a little bit. Where I'm interested in seeing them trade for a Taylor Ward or a Alec Bohm, that would be for, I don't know, some prospects, some pitchers who maybe aren't in the major leagues, some pitchers who are more of lottery ticket guys. I really do expect to see some moves with some urgency this offseason just because of where this team's at. Again, it's year 7. I haven't necessarily gotten any people telling me that, okay, we're going for it all this offseason. But when you look at where things are, when you look at contract situations for various guys, when you look at where the regime itself is, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go for a couple win in 2026 moves.
Yeah, I personally hope they do. And like just looking at Spot Track right now, you did bring up Mike Yastrzemski. That is a name for some reason these last couple days, like hearing on other shows and stuff. He's kind of been in my mind a little bit. I know Cedric Mullins as well seems like a Pirate type of player. Max Kepler was a guy last year I was in on, but he went to the Phillies. So do you think if they were to go that 1-year deal type for like a stopgap, like fill in a hole in left field type, do you think those are probably the cream of the crop candidates for the best case scenario for a 1-year deal, like a Kepler, Yastrzemski, or a Cedric Mullins type?
Yeah, those are 3 guys that I looked into for my article. Another guy that I think is worth mentioning is Michael Conforto. He was it kind of pains me to bring him up because he was terrible for the Dodgers. He batted 199 and just had a really, really bad season. But considering how good he'd been from 2018 to 2024, how consistent he'd been every year before last year, I think that that's someone the Pirates could bet on having a better season next year and figuring some things out. Again, left-handed hitter, has some power. I think that he might he wouldn't necessarily be a sexy signing considering how he was last year, but I really do think that he'd be a lot better in 2026.
Yeah, and Michael Conforto was one of those guys I know a lot of Pirates fans were kind of hoping for last offseason, but then he went to the Dodgers, and it seemed like a deal where it was a very big overpay, and it kind of went that way for the Dodgers perspective. So I'm presuming they've already got rid of him because I think it was a multi-year deal, wasn't it? Was it 2 or 1?
1 year, 17 million. So
Okay.
he's not going to make anywhere near 17 million this year after the season he had.
Yeah. So do you think he would probably be one of those like 1 year 8 to 10?
Yep.
Probably. Okay, cool.
That's exactly what I'd be thinking. And at that, I think the Pirates would have some interest and should have some interest in it.
Cool. Moving on very briefly, we're gonna switch gears. Of course, we brought it up. Mitch Keller. I'm in the. It seems like there's debates everywhere I go. Like, do they trade him? They don't need to trade him. They should trade him. We saw this all during the season, and then they didn't trade him, and we saw what the David Bednar return brought them, and it probably wasn't what a lot of people wanted. And then I was kind of like, I'm kind of happy they didn't trade Mitch Keller because they probably wouldn't have gotten what a lot of people wanted because a lot of people wanted a major league bat. But I'll just say this. I don't think any team's going to trade a major league bat in a playoff position during the season. That just did not make sense to me. Now, it does make sense now, but I'm still in the assumption of like, I personally don't want them to trade Mitch Keller. So I'll just ask you very briefly, do you think they have to move on from Mitch Keller to make anything happen just because they've already offloaded the Hayes contract, Bednar kind of, but what's your stance on Keller?
Have to trade him? No. I think that there are a lot of good things that Mitch Keller does that he would do for any team. He's consistent. You know exactly what you're getting out of him. You know he's going to give you a lot of quality starts. He's going to give you a lot of innings, and I think there's value in having that. However, I also think that the easiest way for the Pirates to improve this offseason is trading Mitch Keller. It's by getting his contract off the books, getting something solid in return, whether that's a top prospect who's major league ready, whether that's a guy who's under team control for a couple of years, whether that's just the pure, like, they shouldn't just dump him for financial flexibility, but if you can get someone who's major league ready and the flexibility to sign someone else, like, you could possibly solve third base and left field just by moving Mitch Keller, considering the money you save and someone you get back. I think that it's more likely than not that he gets moved just because of the problems that he could solve for the Pirates. But at the same time, if he were to be with the Pirates in spring training, I wouldn't be complaining and saying, oh, they absolutely had to train him. This is an unserious franchise or anything like that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Whenever I look at this Mitch Keller situation personally, I'm in the camp where I don't want him being traded because I don't want a strength of this team being pitching quickly becoming a weakness. Because once you trade too much of that major league depth, because Keller's going to eat you innings. He's a guy that has not been injured that much. He stays healthy. He's eating these innings. He's pitching 6-7 inning ball games. And he's basically that veteran of the very young pitching staff, particularly. Even though we can say Paul Skeens is the leader, the veteran leader is Mitch Keller right now, unless they bring in the typical veteran lefty they like to do every year. But like you look at this other like young pitchers, do you agree like with the sentiment of like if they were to trade Mitch Keller, things could possibly go downhill kind of quick, per se? Guys like Ashcraft, Burrows, maybe Jared Jones, if he comes back, takes a step backwards.
I don't know if I worry about statistical regression if you trade Mitch Keller, but I do worry about health, considering the question marks with Burrows, with Ashcraft. Again, Mitch Keller is someone that you know he's going to make 32 starts. He's going to give you a shot to win, and that's really valuable when you've got a bunch of young guys. And apart from Paul Skeens, you don't really know how much you're getting innings-wise out of those guys. I do think that if they were to trade Keller, they'd go and they'd sign a veteran lefty. They'd go and they'd sign someone who is going to soak up some innings. And I do think that you can get someone who provides relatively similar production for cheaper, but I would worry about how you'd cover the innings if Mitch Keller is traded. I'd say that's my biggest concern if Keller's traded.
Yeah, and then final thing on Keller, I know two teams I've seen the most on social media and hearing people talk, Red Sox and Mets. So now the three players combined for both those teams I see are, for the Mets, like a Mark Vientos type. For the Red Sox, of course, the outfield, Jarren Duran, Wilyer Abreu. Personally, I would rather it be the Red Sox if it has to happen. Do you think if you were to do something with the Red Sox, per se, Keller for Duran, Keller for Abreu, you would probably have to throw in another prospect to get one of those Red Sox outfielders, because I would think they have more trade value kind of than Mitch Keller. What do you think about those names very briefly?
I'm more interested in what the Red Sox could return than the Mets. I haven't looked too far into Mark Vientos, but I'm more interested in solving the outfield, and whether that's Keller and a prospect for Duran or Abreu, that's something I'd be more interested in. I'd also be potentially interested in the password from the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Top 100 prospect. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. It starts with a J.
Yep.
His last name's Garcia. They call him the password. I think that that's something that could make sense. Again, that wouldn't be a major league proven major league hitter. He's 1 for 7 in his major league career. But I do think that's the type of top prospect that you could get in return for Mitch Keller. And maybe that sort of thing would make sense. However, all that being said, the number one team I'd want to see a Keller trade for is the Orioles. I'd want to see them solve their third base problem by making a deal with the Orioles, whether that's for a Kobe Mayo or Jordan Westberg. That's where I'd like to see them go in an ideal Mitch Keller trade, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know. Before we get to our last thing, because I know we're running short on time, another trade target I've thought about is Brandon Lau, and of course Adolis Garcia. Not for Keller, but Adolis Garcia, for some weird reason, has been in my brain from the Texas Rangers, a guy they probably want to move on from. I would totally take the gamble on a guy that could hit you 20 home runs in the outfield to put with an O'Neill Cruz. Add some, like Hiles brought it up on his Bucco territory, to add a Latin veteran, a guy to mentor some of the Dominican guys, like those types of players. I think the Pirates desperately need one of those guys to help mentor guys who maybe aren't like Cruz, for example, guys who aren't from here, guys who are younger in the league. I think that could go a long way. But yeah, I really like Brandon Lau as an option. I like your Orioles partnership as well. And moving on, I hinted to you this. I want to play a game really briefly. Realistic or unrealistic? I already gave you the names. I'm going to refresh you, though, and read these contracts. So my last episode, I covered Jim Bowden's article of his top, I think it was top 40 or 50 of his free agents and possible fits. He listed all the teams and what a contract for these guys could look like. And I also have up the MLB Trade Rumors top 50 list that just came out. They had the Pirates predicted on 2 of these guys. And of course, I feel like in the running for not picked, but in the running for others. So if you want, you can just say realistic or unrealistic. And if you want to, you can say why. Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. So let's start with Bowden's article. So Trent Grisham, former New York Yankee, 2 years, $30 million. He had the Pirates listed as the second possible best fit. Realistic or unrealistic?
Unrealistic. I think we'll get more, and they also gave him a qualifying offer. So there's a draft pick. I don't think that's happening.
Cool. Number 2, this guy came in 27th on Bowden's list, and Grisham was 24th. Ryan O'Hearn, first base, outfielder, or DH option. 2 years, $24 million. Again, the Pirates were second on the list behind the Padres.
Realistic. That could make sense.
Okay. Number 3, this is one of those guys. He was ranked 29th. The only other guy in the top 30. They were all hitters. 2 years, $30 million. He's a very controversial name amongst fans of every team. Is he good? People don't want to know. Luis Arias, first base DH, a guy who's pure contact. They have the Pirates as the 3rd best fit behind the Padres and Athletics. 2 years, 30. Would you do it?
I wouldn't do it. I could see them doing it, but that's not where I'd spend my money.
Okay, I have to agree on that one. The number 4, 33rd on Bowden's list, reliever Emilio Pagan, the former Red, 2 years, $22 million. 3rd on the list is the Pirates, behind the Reds and Athletics.
Unrealistic. I don't think they're going to 8 figures for a reliever.
Okay, number 5, 37th, a former Cardinal, kind of struggled with the Mets. Ryan Helsley, 1 year, $10 million. He actually has the Pirates as the top fit.
I don't think I'd do 10, but I could see them being a landing spot there. Maybe for 8 or 9.
Okay, and then another former Red, 1 year, $11 million. He has the Pirates on second on the top fits, 39th overall. Nick Martinez, another former Red, starter or bullpen option.
I don't see that one.
Okay, and then moving on to the trade rumors article, my personal free agent dream. Okay, you can probably tell on the North Shore 9 thing, I'm big into the NPB guys. They actually have one of the guys predicted 4 years, $64 million for Kazuma Okamoto, third baseman or first base option. Is this something that's realistic, or should I just give up on it?
I don't know if you should give up with it, but with what we've just seen with the Dodgers in the World Series, I feel like the NPB guys, the market is kind of exploding. I don't think that's the number that Okamoto would end up on, even as the not top guy from coming out of Japan. I think that's unrealistic just because that number, I think, will go up.
Yeah, the other predicted places are the Padres, Diamondbacks, and Cubs, and I think all those teams would probably outbid the Pirates. Next up, they brought him up.
Would be nice.
Yeah, I think Okamoto will, not to get sidetracked, will be a lot cheaper than Murakami will.
Yes,
personally.
Definitely.
Because I've watched some YouTubers say Okamoto would probably be a guy small market teams could definitely throw their hat in the ring on. Moving on, this is a guy, they didn't predict him to the Pirates, but he's brought up. You brought up Suarez, realistic or unrealistic?
Realistic. I want to see it happen.
That would be awesome. Moving on, this was the guy, one of them actually predicted 3 years, $42 million. I think he's due for a payday now after the Mariners playoff run. Jorge Polanco, second base, third base option. Realistic or unrealistic?
I'll say realistic. I don't think he's leaving Seattle. I don't think that I think his stock is too high to go to a team outside the playoffs, but at that contract, he'd be doable.
I think Seattle's also one of those teams that desperately needs to say we're buying in. I think it's time for them to go. Moving on,
another guy is leaving. I can't see Polanco leaving.
Yeah. Moving on very briefly. Let me see here. Let's see. Okay. The next guy they have on this article, not predicted but brought up, shortstop, 2 year, $30 million. Ha-Seong Kim. This is a weird one. Realistic or unrealistic?
Unrealistic.
Okay. Moving on. We got Ryan O'Hearn. We already covered this one. I think you said realistic on that one. This one's funny. He isn't brought up, but he's brought up in the article. Former Pirate Cody Ponce coming from the NPB. Would you bring him back home?
Unrealistic.
I know Bucko Mike's obsessed with him in the North Shore 9 Discord.
I know he's got some shooters out here. But Cody Ponce has some guys who want him back.
But yeah, so I think that's going to do it for today. Sadly, Cody Ponce, I don't think is coming back to Pittsburgh. It would be a fun one. It's been a fun story to follow. Colin, let us know where we can find all your stuff.
You can find all of my work at post-gazette.com, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Colin_Beazley. Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again. I know we talked a little bit World Baseball Classic for the North Shore Island playback stuff. But if you ever want to come on, we can talk some World Baseball Classic when those guys' rosters come out. Because I kind of want to do an episode in the future predicting some of the Pirates to make the teams. Because we already know Paul Skeens, but yeah, that's coming in the next couple months. Thank you, Colin, for joining us. Make sure to subscribe to the channel down below. My name is Nathan. That's Colin. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.